This change will impact many different industries and products.
Welcome to Time Out for Trade, where we delve into the latest trends and insights on supply chains. I'm Macie Opalinski, your host, and today I'm joined by Mike Lahar, Deringer's Regulatory Affairs Manager, and Teresa Stepan, Senior Regulatory Affairs Specialist, also here at Deringer. We're going to talk about the Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, and the details involved with its new e-filing requirements. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Could you start with giving us a little bit of background? What is e-filing and why is CPSC requiring it all of a sudden?
Thanks, Macie. E-filing allows importers of regulated consumer products to electronically file data elements from a CPSC Certificate of Compliance with U.S. Customs and Border Protection via a partner government agency message set. The goal is to reduce paperwork, give CPSC earlier visibility into shipment compliance data, and help compliant shipments move more quickly and more efficiently.
When does this change become mandatory?
For most regulated products, it becomes mandatory on July 8th, 2026, which is coming up very soon. However, for products coming out of a foreign trade zone, or FTZ, the full implementation date isn't until January 8th, 2027.
Interesting. So how can a company know if their products will be affected by this change?
This change will impact many different industries and products. Even if you think you won't be affected, it is crucial to review your products now and ensure they meet CPSC compliance standards prior to the mandatory implementation date.
So a helpful starting point to see if a product will be impacted is the CPSC's regulatory robot, which can guide users through questions to help identify potentially applicable requirements. The regulatory robot is a tool which is available on the CPSC website. That said, the robot should be treated as a starting point rather than the sole compliance decision maker. It's still up to the importer to do additional research and determine if their product or products are affected by CPSC regulations.
Is there a list of all the HTS codes that are subject to e-filing?
Certain HTS codes will be flagged in ACE as an indicator that a product likely needs to be e-filed. On CPSC's website, in the document library, there is a list of about 600 HTS codes which will be subject to e-filing. Those HTS codes are included on the list if at least 50% of those products would normally require certification. However, it is important to note that this list is not all-encompassing. There are some products being imported under other HTS codes that are not included on the list and may still require certification. Also, HTS classification changes are occasionally made by agencies outside of CPSC, which can impact the validity of the list. Ultimately, the importer is responsible for knowing which of their imported products require product safety certificates, regardless of the HTS code's inclusion on the list.
I see. So could you go ahead and explain the different types of product safety certificates?
CPSC is looking at two main certificate types, which are the Children's Product Certificate, or CPC, and the General Certificate of Conformity, or GCC. A CPC certifies that an importer's children's product complies with all applicable product safety rules. A GCC certifies that an importer's general use product complies with all applicable product safety rules. For more details, the CPSC website has several documents available about product certification. Also, the regulatory robot tool that Mike mentioned earlier can help users determine what regulations may apply to their product.
As a part of the e-filing initiative, I've heard a lot about CPSC Product Registry. Do importers have to use the product registry in order to e-file?
No, not necessarily. The product registry is one path, but it's not the only way to participate in e-filing. The registry is especially useful for companies that want to store and manage certificate data centrally and then transmit a reference-based filing during entry. But companies can also e-file using the full PGA message set without relying on the registry.
And that leads me to my next question. When e-filing, would you recommend using a full PGA message set or a reference PGA message set?
Well, it kind of depends on your specific needs. Utilizing the full PGA message set is great for participants who import a limited number of regulated consumer products or who don't repeatedly import the same product. But if you're someone who repeatedly imports the same regulated consumer product over and over again, and which requires a submission of product certification data, I'd recommend that you consider using the reference PGA message set.
Can we move on to talk about CPSC disclaimers? When would an importer use one?
So CPSC uses two main disclaimers, Disclaimer A and Disclaimer B, and which one applies depends on the situation. Disclaimer A is used when no certificate is required. So that would include products within CPSC's jurisdiction when no rule, ban, standard, or regulation requires a certificate. Products outside CPSC's jurisdiction, upholstered furniture that complies with certain flammability standards and has a certification label, but doesn't require a GCC if that is the only applicable rule. Additional requirements such as lead in paint or children's product testing for lead and other applicable requirements may still require GCC or CPC. Disclaimer A may also apply to personal use products that were exported for repair and then re-imported, as well as gifts sent from one consumer abroad to another in the United States. It can also apply to imported component parts that are used to make finished products and are not sold or used by consumers as finished products. E-filing applies only to finished products imported for consumption, warehousing, or distribution in the United States and packaged, sold, held for sale, or used by consumers.
Meanwhile, disclaimer B applies when CPSC is using enforcement discretion. In other words, a rule, ban, standard, or regulation exists, but a certificate is not required in these certain situations. Some examples include adult wearing apparel exempt under specific flammability standards, and household refrigerators with an appropriate safety certification mark. One more important thing to note, though, when filing Disclaim A, the filer must select and provide the appropriate intended use code. When filing Disclaim B, there is a specific intended use code that you must use, 130.006, which is for consumer products intended for ages 13 and up. Intended use codes have not been previously required, so to submit a disclaim, you need to use those. It's important that you make sure that you're aware of them.
Thank you so much for breaking all that down and getting into the details of that. For our last and final question, what resources can our listeners use to better understand all of these requirements? Because there's a lot.
There is a lot. CPSC has a lot of resources on their website, including a document library, FAQs, pre-recorded webinars, and the regulatory robot we've been talking about. There's also still time to join the voluntary stage, meaning you can try out the product registry and the e-filing process prior to the mandatory implementation. This will allow you to get more comfortable with the software and be able to offer feedback to CPSC. The voluntary stage will remain open until July 8th. Lastly, Deringer also has a dedicated CPSC e-filing resource page and a CPSC disclaim declaration on the forms section of our website.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to include all of those resources in the description box of this episode. And with all of that said, it concludes this episode. Thank you so much, Teresa and Mike, for sharing your expertise with us, and for all of our listeners for tuning in. For more content from Deringer, head over to our website at anderinger.com and find us on social media on X, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thanks again for listening.